Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riders from the inside out. Today's topic is working with older horses. And with me is the lovely Deb Romero. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, and thank you for joining us. And I should say this at the beginning instead of the end. Please like, subscribe, comment. You can ask questions in the comments, and we are happy to pick up topics based on comments and questions. So, all right, away we go. Working with older horses. Anything you want to lead off with, Deb?
Well, what is an aged horse? I don't even know what an
Ooh,
aged horse is, really. I
that's a
mean,
bit
because
relative.
I've got a 25-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 20-year-old.
Yeah. And are they retired? Oh,
No,
no.
it's not like, okay, they're not in competitive work. They're not getting ready for a cross-country event or any of that.
Right.
But the way they're kept, they're fit, and they get worked a couple times a week. But mainly on the stuff we do with healthy biomechanics, just keeping them healthy in a biomechanical way.
Yes. And I think I wanted to kind of touch on at any age of the horse, especially when they're like over 18, they're pushing 20. A lot of people think it's kind to just pitch them out to pasture and retire them. And
Mm.
I think horses, first of all, are highly social creatures. And secondly, like retirement isn't a natural state for an animal.
So
I
are
mean,
we talking retirement from activity, like exercise with a human, that kind of?
well, what does retirement mean? To most people, it means stop working. So when we
Right.
translate
Okay.
that,
I like that.
when we translate that to a horse, we think of stop riding, stop working. So a lot of horses would literally be put out to pasture just to kind of enjoy their days, which nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that.
True.
But the lack of movement and exercise can sometimes be the reason for more health issues or deterioration.
Good point.
So without movement, and especially guided or productive or structured movement, it's exercise, but it's kind of one of those questions. Is it work? Is it not work? Like my 28-year-old Arab that had colic surgery, before the colic surgery, she was definitely slowing down. And I was
Mhm.
attributing it to, her age. 28 is a nice, ripe old age for any horse. But I still rode her and did groundwork 4 or 5 days a week. And it was, at her age, I didn't push her, but she worked and we worked on her balance. And she was definitely slowing down. Like getting her to go forward was difficult. She was sort of showing her age in her face. She was putting on a longer coat than she used to in
Mm.
the winter. She wasn't healing as fast from her sores, and she couldn't eat hay anymore, which I attributed to just, she had several teeth removed and lost a couple molars for different reasons. So I really thought, well, she's aging gracefully. She's happy. Oh, and she wasn't keeping weight on as well. I was having to feed her quite a bit more than I used to have to feed her
Mm.
to keep weight on her. And then she colicked in November, and the colic got pretty bad, and she ended up at the clinic. And the surgeon called me, and I had to make the decision to do exploratory colic surgery. Basically, they couldn't find anything with the pre-surgical diagnostics that they could really say for sure that anything was happening. So she wasn't responding to the meds. And when I discussed surgery with the vet, because she was working so much, she was in really good physical condition.
Ah.
So the vet was like, no, she's a good surgical candidate. She's in great condition for her age. How is she otherwise? I said, she's active. So keeping her fit, I think, helped her become a surgical candidate. It was part of making my decision was how she was going to recover from that. And then she had to go in for surgery. So what I told them was go ahead and open her up. If it involves any kind of resection, which is where they cut the intestines because some of it's died and then they sew it back together. And I haven't seen horses at any age recover easily from that.
No,
So I said,
no.
if it involves a resection, just she needs to be put down on the table. And if it's anything else, and if you think she can recover, go ahead and do the surgery. So they did that and called me when they were done. So she ended up having lipomas, which are benign fatty tumors. They were growing from the abdominal wall. So they were growing on the wall muscle inward. And as they got bigger,
okay. They were pushing.
They were pushing to the point that she had an impaction colic in her small intestine. So it was really restricting her digestion. And there was one significant one pressing on, most of them were on the small intestine, one on the small colon. So they got all of them out. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5. She came back, she bounced back pretty good. And that was, I want to say mid-November. Mm-hmm. So now we're at the end of February. That mare, that surgery, I have a 10-year-old horse again. My 28-year-old is on fire. It's like she's just her 10-year-old self again. And it made me think all of those things, which I reasonably was attributing to age and keeping her as fit as I could. After she had these lipomas removed and fully recovered, it took 10 years. She's acting like a 10 or 15-year-old horse again.
Wow.
And her coat, her heavy coat shed out. She's eating a little bit of hay and handling it, mostly wet food. I'm back to riding her 4 or 5 days a week. She's getting put on a ton of weight. It's like, and she has all this energy. Like she came in season again, backing up to the 5-year-old right next to her. I'm like, you cougar, total cougar. So she's made this, everything that was sort of, I was attributing to old age pre-surgery, since the surgery, it was I have no idea how long this has been going on, but it's been impacting her digestion.
Just slowly. And when we see them every day, do we notice, that's a little different. That's a little different.
Well, and I did, but all of these things I thought, well, she's, 28, she's kind of winding down. Mm-hmm. And she's still 28, but I think she's going to live till she's 50 at this rate, because I'm like, oh my God, this mare has so much energy. I can't believe. And she never looked her age. She always aged very well because I kept her fit.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And I go, there's no way I would retire this horse. There's no way. She would demolish the pasture she was in out of boredom or having way too much energy.
Well, yeah, there's a big thing here in Virginia that we've just got so much grass. I don't, my horses, and I do lab work because of twice a year or more frequently because of, things like Cushing's are coming up, and, so staying on top of internal health, like you said, things you can't see.
Absolutely.
Having too much grass. Now I don't have young horses, so grass is an issue. I have too much grass. I need some starving thoroughbreds from off the track to come live in my house.
Or if you don't keep, like, you can balance, say, high sugar grass with extra exercise. And even
that's a great point. Yeah, because my big mare didn't founder until I went on a 2-week vacation.
Yeah, and without calorie burning, that metabolic
calories.
Yeah,
it just pushed her over the edge enough.
Yeah,
so that's a good point.
No, and it's, nature doesn't retire. It's like birds go out and look for food every day until they're dead. The squirrels get up, look for food every day until they're dead. So that activity, when nature is left to itself to go out and provide food and water, you have to keep moving.
Yes.
And I think even as humans, that's really what we're designed to do. And horses who evolved as kind of nomadic creatures, if they're not moving, there's significant health issues that can be the side effect of lack of movement.
Yes.
And the exercise doesn't have to be strenuous. It's not cardiovascular, but it's movement, regular movement. And in the pasture, because we provide food and water, they don't have to move. So to me, training time, or if you want to call it exercise time with an older horse, is still critical to just their overall well-being.
And sometimes it doesn't even have to be riding. It can be hand walking.
It could be hand walking.
It's better for the human too.
You can, take a walk and bring your horse. Yes.
Go walk on the beach and take your horse with you. Yeah. I like that idea.
And it may be a horse, it may be a kite. You're not sure. It'd be exciting. But yeah, I think I volunteered for years at ERAF, which is the Equine Rescue and Adoption Foundation in Palm City, Florida. And in South Florida, the highest percentage of our volunteers were well over 70 years old. It's a lot of retired people volunteering at different nonprofits in South Florida. And they were amazing. They loved volunteering. They would come in and stay active themselves, scrubbing water troughs, cleaning stalls. I mean, all of the barn work. They were looking for something physical to do and to be around horses. And at one time, it was so funny. The barn manager and I were good friends. And she said, one of the volunteers said, well, why don't you just retire some of these old rescue horses? And she came to me and goes, I wanted to say, why don't you just sit at home and watch TV? Why are you here? Because she was this young 20-something and she's looking at the volunteer who's over 70 going, you're telling me to retire a horse, but you don't want to retire. You don't want to sit in a pasture and do nothing. You're here, you're active, you're doing something with your body and you're doing something that you care about. And I mean, that never has to stop.
Yeah, I agree. Living the farm life every day has its drawbacks, especially this winter, but I don't have to go to the gym.
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of exercise here.
Absolutely. No, and one lady who has a couple of horses here, I don't know her age. I'm very bad at guessing ages, but she's retired. She's retired from her job and she has her horses and she comes and trailers them out and rides on the trails 3 days a week. And she had some back pain and she was really worried that the surgeon was going to want to do surgery or tell her she shouldn't ride her horse anymore. And she was distraught because she has every intention of riding horses until she's in her 90s or just can't get a leg over their back. And I love it. So she was thrilled to find out she only had arthritis in the spine.
Okay.
Not surgery. And we did a riding lesson because I wanted to see if I could help her by helping her balance so she wasn't aggravating it. And sure enough, we made some changes to how she was riding. And she came back from her trail ride today, pain-free.
Yay.
I know.
And that's a great point that, it's to keep the organism using itself in a healthy way, horse and human. It's
Absolutely.
Not just exercise, it's got to be biomechanically correct exercise.
Yeah. So the pain issue was like a big red alarm bell telling her, if you don't change something, right, you're going to be debilitated. So the pain at being the alert system. And I said, well, I gave her your number and said, you can, work through Zoom, do Alexander work, and I'll help you with your riding and see if that helps. So Just it wasn't even that big of a change in her riding.
And I think we've seen that with horses too. It's very subtle. And that's like us working from the inside out. It's very subtle work, and you may not even see what's going on.
But you definitely feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that's
every
the
time
same.
sorry, go ahead.
That's the same for people when they come to me and they find out what their not so good habits are, and I give them something different to do. They actually usually have more energy because it's making things easier when you use yourself properly.
Absolutely. So there's positive stress and negative stress. And when we have a small dysfunctional use, like for this lady, she sat too heavy in her seat on the horse, right? And her horse had a crookedness pattern. So it between the horse being a bit crooked and her keeping all of her weight a little bit behind the center of the horse and too much in her seat, she was aggravating, I think, the right side of her low back. That's where all the pain was, right? So getting her out of a sitting position more in a standing alignment. As soon as she went from sitting to standing, and she's still on the horse, right? It's just an orientation, internal orientation.
It's kind of changing the thought,
right,
to change the movement. Like, just pretend you're standing on the horse and not sitting. That can change everything.
Yes, standing over the horse rather than sitting in the saddle.
Yes,
and
like
as soon as she came out of really laying against the cantle, she had a high cantle saddle, and so laying against the cantle, as soon as she kind of came out of that position, she instantly noticed the left to right imbalance. Where before, all of her friends that she rode with kept telling her how crooked she was, but she didn't feel it.
She couldn't figure it out.
She couldn't feel it.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
If you don't have somebody else that knows how to point the horse and rider or both in the proper direction, you're never going to figure it out. You're always going to say, well, that saddle always goes to the right. What is up with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, and I think the horse's motto, which should be our motto, is no pain, no pain. That's the right kind of exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when we push, I think when we're young, we think no pain, no gain. And so we push ourselves. But if we're dysfunctional, all it does is small repetitive wear and tear over time. But what was so fascinating is I go, here's a retired lady with a back pain issue that sent her to a surgeon, significant back pain, and she really wants to ride her horse. And in a couple of small adjustments to her riding, she just went and had a 3-hour trail ride and came back without back pain. And her back pain is now her friend to alert her when she's falling into her habit.
That's her signal
of sitting back. Yeah.
And we can both relate to that because we've both had similar type things happen to us when, instead of letting the pain consume us, I always say, what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Where am I not using myself well? I need to pause and look at what I'm doing.
Well, and whether it's arthritis in our bodies or the horse's body, I go, arthritis is just inflammation, which means that you have a small dysfunctional use in that area. That's all it means. And, it used to be believed that the body can't regrow cartilage. And the reason they believed that is because the mechanics weren't being changed. And as long as there's excessive force on the joint, it can't restore cartilage. And I go, but why would the body only have one thing it could not produce, like cartilage? That makes no sense. We have a new liver every 7 years. How could we, not regrow? And
that's real interesting you bring that up, because Plumley, my halflinger, I couldn't get him sound. So the vet and I were like, okay, let's do x-rays. We did x-rays and he had absolutely no soul. Zero. And what her hypothesis is because he can't, the blood vessels can't regenerate
because
in
he
his
has
foot.
so much weight on his front end.
Yeah, so we got a special laminitic farrier with special shoes that we put on him, and it was only through 2 shoeing cycles, so 10 weeks. Retook the x-rays and he had 1.25 centimeter growth of sole.
Wow.
Just by that, just by
Because the blood flow was restored.
He couldn't regenerate foot.
Right. No, and there's a lot of and we'll have to do a talk on this at some point, but even navicular, which was once thought of as degenerative disease, that the bone was ossifying and degenerating, now they look at it as a concussive disease, that it's the excessive concussion, just exactly what you're describing. Yes. So instead of navicular, he just didn't grow any depth of sole. Plumbing. Right. But it's the same thing. You can have concussive issues that impede the circulation to the foot that can degenerate the navicular bone, the pedal bone, or the soles.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And he's 100% sound, barefoot, galloping around the pasture.
Yes. Ages later, even though he's aged, he's better.
He's better. He's 25. He's my oldest.
Yeah.
And he's just as happy as he can be.
That's awesome.
Being his little halflinger self in the pasture.
That's awesome. I think the other thing I sort of wanted to talk about too is an example with my dad. What is it? The end of 2019. He's 85 and told he had to have triple bypass heart surgery at the age of 85. This was before COVID, thank goodness. And what a scary, tenuous thing for all of us, for him to go in for this major surgery. And he had health complications, diabetes and, different issues. And he's 85. I mean, his blood vessels are like paper thin. So they're doing this triple bypass surgery. So the next day we go in and they keep him in a cardiac ICU for the first couple of days. But as soon as we were allowed in to see him that same day, which I think was the day after the surgery, they want him up and walking. Wow. They give him a walker and a helper. And you take I think it starts with 10 minutes. You have to make it around the nurse's station back to the bed. And they said that all of the research shows that if they let people rest at any age, but particularly older patients, the protocol now after major heart surgery is get up and start moving, because the healing rate is substantially better than if they let people stay in bed and recuperate before they get up and start moving.
Yeah, because my dad had open heart surgery only when he was 45. He had his first heart attack. And I know they had him in bed for at least a week.
Yeah, with no movement. The recovery rate was significantly worse without movement. Especially with blood clots in the legs or leg issues. The legs actually take longer to heal than the heart, at least on a bypass. They take the veins out of the legs.
They do, the inside of the leg usually.
Right, and that's the longer healing process, trickier healing. And that was where he had more complications, actually, was in the legs.
Wow.
But I was amazed, and it was he had to start with a walker, but they were get up and get moving. That was the big instruction to the family, is he's got to take these walks that are timed. And now he takes a walker with him, but he learned how not to lean on it, how to have it there in case he gets unstable. But the guy's walking 2 miles a day now. I can't believe it. And it's keeping him healthy. Now
that's a good point, because how are we affecting our horse's health? And we're either doing it in a positive way or a negative way, one or the other.
It's never neutral.
It's never neutral.
But
I totally
sometimes where
agree.
we think we're being kind by not asking them to work, I don't think it's as kind as humans can perceive. Like when we're working for a living, we can't wait for retirement, right? But once you're retired, or what I've seen living in Florida, there's lots of
Yeah.
retired people. They're bored. They're bored. They want to do something. They want to be active, right? They might not want to go to a 9 to 5 anymore. Like a horse might not want to compete anymore, but that doesn't mean stop working, because that's the bonding time with their person. And for all kinds of health issues, it's important that they have structured movement.
Yes.
Not that they have to work hard, but that they have some sort of daily movement.
And if you think about, because if you think about the problem with laminitis or Cushing's or any of those aging type diseases, you really have to look at the fat muscle ratio
Yes.
in the horse and the human. You know, that's the key. It's not how much you weigh, it's how much muscle mass do you have as opposed to fat mass.
Interesting. And that's across the board, any age.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, you know, back in my bodybuilding days, lean mass muscle weighs more than fat.
Oh, yeah.
Because it carries more water. So it's going to be heavier than fat. So just losing weight may not be that healthy. It's the exercise that creates the mass, the muscle mass that you need to maintain.
Yes. Well, and even with people, they've shown now that there's far more benefits in walking rather than taking up running or jogging.
Yes, especially as I think, because I used to run and I'm 65 now. So I mean, and am I moving to Florida? I don't know. I'd like to. But, you know, running sounds real good in my head, but my body says, nah.
Just like with a horse, because exercise is not necessarily just cardio.
Exactly.
Like working on balance is significant exercise where you're using deeper muscles, core muscles, stabilizing muscles. And walking has less impact force on your joints, but all the health benefits.
Yes.
So same for horses. It's like, you know, just an easy walk in an arena or around the property or on a trail has massive health benefits for the horse, especially if the rider is balanced and the horse is being asked to balance. It doesn't matter if it's a slow, easy walk. It has huge health benefits.
Yeah. And I think that's what, speaking of your rider that you have, that, you know, she was out of balance. That's why she was in pain.
Yes. And riding was aggravating it. And she was really distressed, thinking it would just break her heart to have to give up riding. You know, she was really, really distressed about it. And now she's euphoric. I mean, she was just so happy.
So I'm kind of wondering, because like I said, I'm on a lot of these senior sites. If we've touched on this before, and you're saying going on a trail ride and being in balance, could not being in balance cause these horses to spook at things? You know.
Oh, absolutely. That was the other thing that happened in her lesson. She has a very sensitive little, it's a gaited horse. I want to say a gated saddle horse. I'm not sure I have the breed name right. And her little horse that she takes out 3 times a week is sensitive, could be edgy. She worries about her spooking, but mostly a reliable horse. And what was so fascinating was during her lesson, the horse made it abundantly clear. Her choice of how, like, we were playing between this lady's normal position where she leaned back against the cantle, which a lot of gaited horse people are told to do, that that's how you're
That's
supposed
how
to
you can,
ride
right.
a gaited
I've
horse.
heard that.
And I said, well, okay, if that's what you want, fine, but mechanically, it makes no sense.
Right.
I said, I'm looking at mechanics and physics. It puts you behind the horse and it makes you succumb to centrifugal force. So I go, if you're leaning back that far and you're behind the movement, if that horse spins, you're going off the outside.
You're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I see that come up a lot. I see things. So that also brings up the fear in the rider.
Well, and that's what was so interesting was we did work a tiny bit with how to get her horse to calm down when her horse escalates, because that happens quite often. But when we were actually working on just the rider balance, when the lady sat back, her horse got high-headed and distracted and started looking around. And then when she came more forward to a more vertical alignment over the middle of the movement or the middle of the horse, that horse instantly focused on the rider, didn't focus on the environment, and calmed down. And it was so cool because that doesn't always happen. But this little sensitive mare was black and white to the rider. I don't like it when you sit here, and I do like it when you sit here. So a lot of times what we attribute to behavioral issues with the horse is the horse sort of screaming at us, hey, all your weight's in your seat. My back is killing me, right? And it's killing the rider's back. It's probably killing the horse's back too.
Yes. Yes.
So it was so interesting to just watch that transformation. That's how dynamic it is. That's the incredible thing about finding better coordination or balance or more, accurate mechanical use of our bodies has a dynamic influence on how the horse can move, which then can directly influence their behavior.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I think that's really important as we age. And I don't know about horses, if they have, I guess that's how they show fear, is the spooking.
It can be fear, but sometimes a certain level of discomfort puts them on high alert. Because they feel that they're compromised by the weight of the rider. So a rider that's out of balance can make a horse feel compromised in their environment and thus more defensive. So more flight, more fight, because they feel with my rider here, I couldn't get away from a predator very quickly. So I need to be on high alert.
Good point.
Right? They feel that they can't get away from it. And so as soon as the rider took the weight out of her seat and it was more equally distributed through her legs and her upper body, and she was more vertical, she felt lighter to the horse and she was in the middle of the movement. And the horse kept saying, yes, sit there, please, by not paying attention to the environment and bringing her attention back to the rider.
That's a great point. When those ears go forward and they're not on me, I know I need to change something.
Yeah. And sometimes
I need to look for something I need to change, because if they're not listening to me and they're listening to the environment, that's not the relationship I want.
Right. And we all think of that first. What did the horse see? And we look, right? But sometimes, and that's what kind of blew this lady's mind, was what made her back feel better also made her horse want to talk to her more. And it just never occurs to us sometimes that the issue with the horse behavior could be something related dynamically to the rider's weight and mass being carried by the horse.
And like you said, it can be very subtle. It doesn't have to be this huge thing.
Right.
It's very subtle, but it's so dynamic.
Yes. But with a spooky horse, who thinks to look at our riding position related to a spooky horse?
Yeah.
But it's directly related.
And also referring back to the older horse, they can change.
Yes.
They're not stuck in a thought of being older.
Well, and I think that comes full circle to working with older horses and maybe even thinking of ourselves that way. Because everybody has a different age that they would call the horse old. I've heard everything from 10 or 12 years old, and I've met people that have horses that are over 30. I met one pony donkey cross that was 50 years old. Yeah. So it's age is kind of relative. And I think the more you keep moving, the slower you age. I think that's true for horses or people.
I agree. And I also, we touched on, since we're talking about horse geeks and inside out, what's going on the inside of are we eating healthy, and are we, getting lab work done to make sure, on our horses and on ourselves. And yeah, I went to my DO. I hadn't been there in 2 years. And I said, this little thing has just been happening more and more and more. And she goes, oh, okay, we're going to test for that. And I went, and if I hadn't said, it's just been happening more.
Because I think what we do, and like I did with my mare, we just think, oh, I'm getting older, which means
Yeah.
I'm breaking down.
Oh,
Life's just going to get harder. We just break down as we age like an old piece of wood in the yard, And it's like, no, it was amazing to see the bounce back of my 28, coming 29 this spring mare.
Wow.
Like, not at the early side of 28, the far side of 28. And this retired lady who is riding, and we're all capable of changing. And I think what's amazing is maybe when horses get older or we get older, that balance and more mechanical awareness of our use.
I like that.
Becomes very important, more important than when we're young. Especially
we can make all that. We can make all those big boo-boos when we're we have more rubbery bones.
Yes. Yes. But I think instead of just going, oh, my horse is old, it's kind of a death sentence in a way. It's like, close the book, that chapter's over, right? It's like saying, when we say I'm old or my horse is old, what that really means is we're done trying. We're done moving. We're done working on things. And that to me is very sad. Like, I think the point of this podcast is to go, we don't have to, we might have to slow down, but we don't have to deteriorate.
Oh, because I can't do as much in a day as I used to. And it's not, maybe I should reword that. I get more fatigued. But I'm still active, and I'm still lifting weights. I'm still bodybuilding, so,
right.
I went to a creative economy workshop last weekend. And who at 65 is thinking about reinventing their business,
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I was, I think the oldest person besides me that was there was 35.
No, I love the story of Colonel Sanders, who started Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? Colonel Sanders got his first Social Security check at 55 or 60 and went, are you kidding me? And he had this wonderful chicken recipe, and he started the process of building Kentucky Fried Chicken after retirement.
And I go, that word retire. we got to come up with a different word. What's another word?
Work less. Part-time versus full-time, or I work because I want to, not
Yeah.
because I need to.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So it's interesting how we perceive that, what that is.
Yeah, it's a shutting down.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's kind to any living thing to shut down, because you're either, well, you're not either, you're always, as long as you're alive, you're always growing and changing.
Yes.
And I go, how we explore that when we're 12 is different than when we're 30, which is different than when we're 60, but we're still alive. Or my dad likes to say, every day above the dirt, still a good day. Still getting by. But again, his recovery was amazing. And a lot of it had to do with what the medical field now knows is move.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Even if
Yeah.
that started in the house, like, or around the nurse's station in the hospital, or then in the house between the front door and the back door, and the front door and the back door. But then he, worked his way up to where he found more stability and more strength. And then he could start going outside and then going farther and farther. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And same with my mare. I go, everything that I thought was old age was lipomas.
Ah.
And I wouldn't, there's no way any of us could know that without a colic and without surgery. But sometimes it's too easy to say, oh, it's just old age.
Right.
And not look any further.
Yes. Look deeper. Yeah, I agree. And the same thing with people. What little thing do we need to tweak internally or posturally to create, more energy and ease in our day?
Right.
Yeah.
And on paper, if you had asked me 10 years ago, would I pay for colic surgery for a 28-year-old horse? It would have been a big fat no. And then in the moment it happens, we all make a decision with our heart, not our brains. When it comes to our horses, all of my decisions are straight from my heart, and I couldn't do it because they told me we can open her up and have a look. So I set criteria, but I said, if she can have a good quality of life, go ahead and do the surgery. And it's like, oh my God, I also didn't know how much better they could be. I'm just so thankful that I made that decision from my heart, because it wasn't a rational decision for sure. Doesn't make sense. And yet I have this incredible horse again.
Great.
Yeah.
Good news.
So I think, anything else you want to add to working with older horses?
No.
I
Keep
love
them moving.
Keep them moving. And check the circulation. I just was thinking of Plumley putting on that much sole growth.
Yeah.
In a couple of shoeing cycles.
And it's just, we were just thinking outside the box a little bit. We're like, what does he need that we're not seeing?
Yeah.
And it was just get the x-rays, and I got this great young farrier, little tiny girl. And all she does is specialize in laminitic horses.
Mm.
And she goes, oh, I got this really funky kind of shoe I can put on him. And I was like, go for it.
And still going strong at 25.
At 25, he's just happy as he can be now.
That's awesome.
Just a little extra expense. But then if you think about it, it's not an extra expense now. No, it's just an intervention, like with your mare, your old mare, just a little intervention needed.
Yeah.
And now we've got a better horse.
Yes, absolutely. And Prima's been with me since she was born. So it was, I couldn't just say, oh, well, now she's old, go ahead and put her down. I don't
I'm
want
going to
the
have a tough
expense.
time with that. Every time I look out the window to go to the barn in the morning, I say, okay, is everybody up? I don't see any legs sticking out. I see faces. Oh, good. Yay. It's
Yes,
going to be a good day.
going to be a good day. Another day about above ground is a good day.
Yes, it's going to be a good day.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up with that. I would encourage all you other horse geeks, comment on how old your horse is and if you're still working with that horse.
And how old you are.
And yeah, you don't have to tell us how old you are, just your horse. And I hope you go out and enjoy every moment that you have with your horses. I saw this great plaque that I should have picked up. It said, if you're lucky enough to own a horse, you're lucky enough.
You're lucky enough. Yep.
You are lucky enough. So, all right, horse geeks, thanks for joining us for another podcast, and we will see you soon.
Be kind, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.